Good morning. I'm going to talk today about tactics for non-distraction in daily life. And we specifically talk about um, not just social media, but the actual artifact of the phone, the object of the phone. So there's tons of stuff out there about dopamine and the algorithm. So this is just my take on it and some things that I found helpful, because as we practice meditation on the cushion, right, sitting there, observing the breath or observing, allowing equanimity, equipoise, um, cultivating the mind of non-distraction, right, being alert to, being mindful of the moments when we are distracted and when we return back to the breath. That model is the same model to apply broadly to life, right? To the interactions that I have with other people, with work, with whatever I want to do, whether it's um, writing music, reading a book, um, making these videos, or the daily chores associated with making a living. There's a there's a sort of a there's a mindfulness and an authenticity that's available, uh, but from which we are um, kind of by nature distracted from. And this is not new. Last year I read a book um, where about medieval monks, early medieval monks, even writing about distraction. Uh, and of course, the Buddha writes about distraction. So the mind, our sense organs are kind of inclined toward distraction, um, probably for good evolutionary reasons. But what we try to do in practice is to settle back in and allow all of that to be uh, free from modification, free from unnecessary narrative, those kinds of things, right? I do think that we live in an era that is uniquely difficult for maintaining mindfulness and equanimity. Now, I know that everybody at every point in history will say that. I mean, I can see contemporary accounts of the dangers of the novel using exactly the same language. Uh, when I was a child, the dangers of watching too much TV, right? That this kept us away from experiencing real life, whatever that is. So I know that when I say that I think we live in times that are uniquely difficult, um, or have a unique challenge, um, it is both true and false. We all have, every era, every time, every day, every moment, every minute has a unique challenge. Um, but I do think that two things that we are confronted with now are unique to this moment, and so I think that they are uh, particularly difficult because we don't quite have ways of dealing with them. And so one of them is the concept, and one of them is the physicality of the concept. I thought when I was going to talk about this, I talk about this all the time at home, outside of YouTube in real life. Um, for someone who practices meditation, I am so profoundly available for doom scrolling. I can quite easily lose 30 minutes without even noticing. And with a bit of effort, I can spend an entire evening doing nothing but refreshing screens. It's really terrible. So my inclination is to blame the applications. But my thinking has changed on that a little bit, and um, it's not specific applications, right? It's algorithmic presentation of information, and everything does it. now, and it didn't used to. That's what I mean by it being uniquely difficult. There used to be serendipity, or um, the recommendation mechanism to find a new book, for example, was the library or someone who had read that book, or the bookstore, or a review. But these were all things that required an active step to acquire. The attributes and mechanisms of like television advertising start to get to what I find particularly concerning about the algorithm, and I do talk about it with capital T, capital A. But television advertising didn't know what I had just done. You know what I mean? So there's a dynamic between me and the algorithm that makes it a two-way street, that like Madison Avenue advertising in a magazine, while it triggers all of the same points, if I there's a way to avoid it. And there's certainly a way that the magazine doesn't know who I am. Right? So the algorithm, above and beyond specific applications that have their own mechanism for capturing attention, there's a coherence to the algorithm that I think is really negative. And I say that as someone who fully participates in all of that. And I also say it as someone who thinks that the internet and all of its distractions is really quite a wonderful thing. I've talked in other times, other videos, about how truly wonderful it is that if I want to study a piece of music, the chances are that within a dozen minutes I can have a multitude of recordings, I can have a number of articles about the piece, and I can also have the score on my iPad, probably without having paid anything. Which is amazing. I mean, there's a loss to that. I have a particular nostalgia for a time when, if I wanted to hear a particular record that I knew one of my friends had, you had to go to listen to the record with that friend. So there's something different about iPhones and iPod, the headset mentality. But I got a Walkman in the 80s when they were new, and I thought it was great. I thought it was great to be able to sit on the bus and listen to Prince without having to worry about anybody else. So I'm less conflicted about that. But the algorithm exists in the cosmos only to distract us. It is not a force for good, and it is a force to be resisted. Okay, so, but that's not good enough. That's not enough. What I've noticed is that the actual physical artifact of a phone, and I can't find mine because for Lent I have said I'm not going to just carry my phone around. But so here's the thing, right? Here's what I've noticed myself doing. I work in an office and spend all my time in front of a work laptop, answering emails, sitting on Zoom calls, the corporate routine. Very online, very connected with Teams chat and email. And I am constantly checking my work inbox to see if an email came through, or if there's a new update on a Teams chat or whatever. That's bad enough, right? It would be more rational to say I'm going to check email for the last 5 minutes of every hour. But I don't do that. But whatever, that's work and I can compartmentalize that. But what I notice I do is I'll be sitting at my laptop, tippy tapping away. I'll get bored. I'll pick up my phone. And you know what I'll do on my phone? I'll open up the mobile version of my work email. That is bonkers, right? And I'll just stare at the phone. Like so there's something about the emanations from the screen that is addictive, physically addictive. I know that makes me sound crazy, but there you go. That is what it is. I think that the mobile app screen, I don't think it gives us brain cancer, but I think it gives us spiritual addiction. I mean, I really, right? I can't think of any other explanation for my behavior, that I'm quite happy to just sit. I could be looking at anything. I don't, So, what's the answer? Well, here's my answer 12 minutes in. I thought for a while it was keeping track of screen time, right? Like put a limit on, say, 15 minutes a day on news sites or something like that. And also, I mean, I'm not even talking about content here. That's a different diatribe. So, not the amount of time that I use, but the amount of times that I pick up the phone. Because I looked at that metric one time. My iPhone will tell me. And I kid you not, it was over 200 times, 200 individual times that I picked up my phone in the course of a day. I don't know what that means. 20 times an hour. So, what I'm doing now is, you saw, I can't comprehend what that means to have just. It's like when I used to smoke, and I would sit and I was never like I smoked up 20 cigarettes a day. But I'd never, I remember thinking, like, I'd never smoked 2-3 packs a day, right? So, a pack a day is not nothing, but it's 20 cigarettes a day. But imagine 200. But it always astonished me when that pack ended. That's where I'm going with this. It always astonished me when I would open a new pack in the morning and then by like dinner time it's empty. The lack of awareness of what I'm doing is what astonishes me. Okay, so now what I'm doing at the end of each day, I'm looking to see how many times I picked up the phone. And then not necessarily how long I used it for, because that's it can be a bit misleading. Like if I'm doing video work, it's going to look like so let's just say I'm not concerned about the amount of time. I'm concerned about the number, the frequency. So yesterday, the first time I did this, with just a moment of paying attention, I went from almost 200 pickups to 36. Now, for the most part, the app that was picked up the most was a messaging app of some kind. So as I get better at tracking this, then I'm going to start and think, well, why do I need to check my email right now? I find that when I take the dogs out in the front yard and I stand on the porch, and they're out there for maybe 5 minutes, I check my email. I don't want to do that. So I'm not yet at the point where I'm going to say, all right, I want to only pick up my phone a dozen times a day. I have to pick it up for a bunch of things. You know, my yoga app is on my phone. My authentication app for work is on the phone. So I'm not worried yet about that. But let it be for the first couple of weeks, observing the number of pickups. And 36 is my baseline now. If it's more than that, I'm going to ask why. And if it's less than that, as it gets less and less, I think, well, okay, what am I really using the phone for? And if it's really like a tick, a habit, then um, then I'm done. Anyway, thank you for walking with me on this. And if you have any thoughts, if you want to tell me to just calm down, it's not a big deal, then let me know. But otherwise, as always, keep your wits about you.